Hey everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about procedural versus handmade content in games. Of course, I've got some preface to all that. First of all, I'm going to call it handmade. I do not like the word bespoke. Bespoke implies handmade and unique, where when I think about handmade content, true, some of handmade content is only used once in a game, like a particular dialogue with an NPC, but some handmade content is used on a variety of NPCs, such as barks, the things that people say in response to an event happening. Those were handmade by a human, but they're used by a variety of NPCs in the game. A human made all of the homes in a particular game, the houses, but there's multiple uses of them throughout the game. So I like handmade because that doesn't have the extra baggage that bespoke has. Second, I say procedural. I did do a video where I talked about AI and the rise of AI and the use of AI, but that doesn't cover everything I'm talking about. I've been thinking of procedural content generation forever. I have a whole video about doing it on Arcanum, and I basically used it there for dialogues, where I put in opcodes that narrative designers could insert into conversations that would expand into not just a line, but an entire subtree to handle things that happened a lot, like bribing people, opening up barter windows, asking for rumors, just general greetings. I mean, the greetings alone had how many states? It had like over a dozen states that a greeting would take into account. But I had a lot more plans in Arcanum than just that. The random encounters in Arcanum, I wanted to be so much richer. I wanted to not just be, here's a collection of monsters and we're dropping you into a sector to fight them. I wanted good encounters too, like, oh, here's a merchant, or here's some ruins to explore. And once you found them, they were pegged into the world. So because that sector would be the delta to it, and I've explained how I did tiles and sectors in another video. That sector would be pinned down now as having a delta in it, and that delta was permanent in your game. Play the game again, those ruins may not be there. I loved stuff like that. In fact, the biggest procedural content that was planned and never done, even in the slightest, were roads. I wanted procedurally generated roads to connect settlements in Arcanum for two reasons. One, it took a long time to do those by hand. An artist would have to go through hundreds, if not thousands, of tiles. Certainly thousands, probably tens of thousands, to get from one city to another. The other problem was when they did that, it touched every one of those sectors and saved them out as a delta. Just putting in a road between Tarrant and any other town on that continent increased the delta size of the Arcanum world map by megs. Megs we did not have to spare. So that never happened. But even more so, and I think this is funny with Starfield coming out, I talked about how I made different engines before Fallout, where we settled on the Sprite engine. I made a voxel engine, and that was exploring islands, and it was really cool. But I made a 3D engine, and I talked about how it was slow and we didn't go anywhere with it. But what I was making it for was a 3D space exploration game. It was called Universe. It generated a 3D star map that you could spin, you could rotate, you could see where you were in relation to other stars, you could fly to the other stars. It was going to generate solar systems at random, which is why I did that whole GURPS star system generator that you can see in another video. All of that stuff was coming together for Universe. But whether it was my tech skills or 3D cards at the time, it just really couldn't make it fast and interesting enough. Got set aside, literally never got picked up. So when I'm approaching this whole procedural versus handmade discussion, this isn't something that I've had in the last few months with the rise of LLMs and Chat GPT and all the other art generating AIs. This is stuff I've been thinking of for 25 or 30 years. Now, I've heard the whole debate about handmade versus procedural. Yes, handmade stuff is unique and original and heartfelt in a way that I've never seen procedural do yet. But it's limited. It is literally finite. You can have a huge team generate nothing but handmade stuff for a decade, and then your game comes out and boom, finite. You can do more DLCs, again, finite, finite. What I love about procedural is it is literally infinite. You can have an infinite amount of encounters. Now, yes, I've seen the complaints about procedural. People say procedural stuff is filler, it's random, it can be odd. You can figure out the algorithm. That's true. That's why I think you need richer algorithms. You need algorithms that also explore a space so they can come up with things that the person who made the algorithm never would have thought of. These things already exist. For decades, they've been doing research into discovery using AI to explore through data sets or just have new ways of looking at putting data together. I think this could be done to games. And I think I'm not saying one is better than the other and one should be used exclusively. I'm saying they both have their place. Let me talk to you about what I would do with something like this. Imagine the original Fallout game, but increase the random encounters to include randomly generated caves, military bases, town ruins, still functional towns with people in them doing things. Now, imagine when you find these things, you find them, they get pegged on the map. Now they exist. You can fast travel back there. You start a new game, a whole new set of things that are out there. It takes replayability to a new level that I always wished my games had. But now imagine that you can go into places that actually have procedurally generated NPCs, like one of those towns, and they can ask you to find something or find someone. I mean, they basically give you quests. And those things they're asking you to do may lead to other procedurally generated places. Yes, it may find an old cave you explored and place the item in there and repopulate it, or it may generate a whole new cave in a new location that you've never been to. To me, that's exciting. You may find one of these towns and you may arrive when a raid is happening. We always heard about raiders, but we never actually saw them raiding. You can actually arrive when this raid is happening, and you can decide, are you going to help the raiders? Are you going to help the town? Are you going to kill everybody and take their stuff? No one will ever know you were there, right? It's a richer world for you to explore your own morality, which is what I loved about Fallout. I also like the idea that once you discover two towns and they get generated and people get generated and they've given you quests and you've learned what these people are like. They have personalities, they have all this stuff. They have relationships with each other. Maybe these two towns or two factions that have been generated, they go to war and they fight. What side are you going to fight on? Are you going to choose a side? Are you just going to watch what happened? It reminds me of the end of Fallout New Vegas. But this is stuff that's happening throughout the Fallout map. If two towns get created and grow and start generating things, maybe you can have a rule saying if the two towns get too close to each other when they expand, or maybe you can have a rule saying if they ever go to generate a quest and it goes into a sector that's already been predefined for something for the other town, that's marked as a conflict, a point of friction. Once two towns have too many points of friction, maybe they just go to war with each other. So it even makes sense. You wouldn't have two towns on the opposite end of the map go, we hate each other. You need to travel all the way over here to some place we've never been and fight this town. No, it would always be somebody fairly nearby, and they could even tell you, we're mad at them because we were going to make farms and they got there first, or I've been hearing from, maybe a mayor's telling you about this. He goes, I've been hearing from townsfolk who, their kid got kidnapped and we found them in a village owned by this other group. Cool. So you can use procedural generation to generate that kind of friction and from that generate a story. That makes sense. These just aren't two random people who are mad at each other. They have reasons to be mad. And maybe you were involved in some of them. Maybe you already rescued someone's kid from this other group. And now you're finding out there's even more points of friction. You kind of understand why they want that war. I like that. Let's look at something like Skyrim and Oblivion. They did this to some extent with their Radiant system. But I just see ways of taking the Radiant stuff to a whole new level. Imagine instead of like the Thieves Guild used to give you quests to go find items, and it would generate an item and go throw them in an existing building somewhere. Sometimes there were places you'd already been, so they got repopped. Sometimes it was someplace you'd never been, so great, you got to discover a new cave somewhere. Imagine that those quests lead to brand new procedurally generated dungeons that you've never found before. They're often some mountainside and you've never been there. That's cool, because now in addition to the Radiant quest, you have a reason to be in that dungeon, but you have this huge dungeon to explore. Maybe dungeons and towns that you've already cleared out and they're marked as cleared, now they're taken over by new groups. Maybe you cleared out a Draugr dungeon and now bandits are in there. Maybe, I don't know why you would do it, but maybe you wiped out a town and a nearby town has moved people in and they're farming there and they're taking over buildings there. I can see that happening, and it'd be super fun because it makes you realize that the world is not an empty place. I love the idea of a powerful new NPC arising in the world and being something that you now are asked to deal with. Maybe it's a fighter who has a lot of followers, so there's a lot of variety there. He's got archers and, hardcore tank guys, and maybe he has a wizard buddy, and they're laired somewhere, and you have to, fight their people, and then you finally find out where they are, and you have to get in there and take care of them. Maybe you can talk them out of it. Maybe you can convince them to move. Maybe you do have to fight them. I love stuff like that. There's a ton of gods in Skyrim. A lot of them are crazy or evil. Maybe a high priest of them rises up. A ton of followers, temples going out, killing people or converting them. Maybe temples are showing up in some of the towns you've already been to. There's now a temple on the outskirts. That's really cool. The millions of Draugr ruins out there. Maybe you find one that they've awakened a powerful lich from a long time ago. There's a whole bunch of classes of Draugr power levels you've never seen before. That would be cool. And this is stuff that could just be generated. If you think this map is getting crowded, by the way, don't worry about it. Existing caves can be extended deeper in addition to making new ones on the world map. You could make islands offshore that you can only get to with fast travel. So you don't actually have to place them. You just move to the edge of the map and it goes, which one of these islands do you want to go to? There could be floating cloud castles that come all over the map and then pass beyond it. So you have a window where you can go and do something with it, and then it's gone. Maybe they're just portals to new realms. Maybe they're portals to places besides the demon realms like there were in Oblivion. So there's a lot of ways you can extend places to go without worrying about running out of space on the map. Because of the work I did on my Universe game, this makes me think of Starfield or Star Citizen, which I will admit I haven't followed much. These could take these ideas to much bigger heights than you could do on a land-based game like Skyrim or Fallout. Just surveying the galaxy would be a fun thing, especially if there was someone paying you. They pay you a certain amount of money every time you find an M-class world, but those are rare. So you start doing surveys, you start noticing that certain stellar types tend to have them, so you start doing stellar cartography, narrowing down where you want to actually jump to and do planetary surveys. Maybe that gets you into starship battles. Maybe there are factions having battles, and you're like, I like fights. I like these fights better. Maybe you're looking for alien life. Maybe to join with whatever, federation you're with. Maybe you're looking to battle them. Maybe you're looking for ones that have gone extinct so you can steal their tech. Maybe there's a whole crafting system. And whenever you find an alien race, they have some new bizarre tech line that you've opened up for crafting. This stuff is like endless. It's the stuff I'm talking about are, take any systemic mechanic in an RPG that you like and you can probably extend it procedurally. I actually have a name for these. I'm calling these forever games. Forever games are things that, while they do include a lot of handmade content and handmade DLC will come out for them, they include a lot of procedurally generated stuff too, along all the lines of stuff I just said. So if you love a game like Fallout or Skyrim, you can just play it forever. There will always be new things to do. There will always be new discoveries. There will always be some way of taking some system mechanic you like, crafting, magic, tech, whatever, and push it farther. And I think that's a really, really cool idea. I hadn't even talked about my ideas of procedurally generating the mechanics themselves, like generating new perks. I have ideas on that, but that just it's technical and it goes beyond the scope of this particular video. I'm just saying there's so much that could be done with these forever games that I feel like we're on the cusp of something big and amazing, and it could really happen soon. Hoping it does. Anyway, got a little excited there at the end. Those are my thoughts on procedural versus handmade content.